Hello, everyone. Welcome to the GamePad Online series of interviews with industry professionals. So I hope you're enjoying the live stream. We're going to get back to the Friendly Fire tournament in just a moment. But for now, we want to bring you the first in our series of interviews. I'm joined now by our guest, Adam Boyne, who is the co-founder of a game studio, BetaJester, also a video game ambassador, and GamesIndustry.Biz Future Talent 100. Adam, welcome.
Having me.
Cool. You got quite a lot going on. There's actually more. We're going to get to that, so I didn't even give everyone.
I was like, I got to add to that list, don't I?
So just to let everyone know that you can let us know what you think in the live chat. You can also join our GamePad Discord, because what we're going to be doing is having an extended version of this interview after the event in the Discord. So we'll put that link somewhere on the internet, and then you can all check that out. So you can also send us your feedback, gamepad@mayamada.com, or you are welcome to shout at us on social media, at mayamada on Twitter and at mayamadatees on Instagram. All right, let's get into this interview. So, Adam, as I was looking into your work, I saw that you founded BetaJester in 2015 as a graduate from the University of Hull. And it's interesting to see like the work you do, because it's not just a game studio, but you kind of use the technology in other applications in other areas for different sort of problem-solving outcomes. So, I guess what I wanted to know is, why start a studio out of uni? Because most people are just like, let me find a job. But you were like, let's add the whole burden of starting a game studio. So what was your thinking? Like, how did it come about? And what were you thinking, to be honest? That's really what I want to know.
Why? Why would you do this to yourself? So when I started at university, I discovered, I went to university to do computer science. It wasn't even games related to start with. It came the second term in my first year. I had a choice for my coursework: either make a very boring business banking app thing, or make a game. And I'm like, if I had the choice, why would I not just make a game then? That sounds great.
Yeah.
And in the process of doing that, there was a small competition which we called a game jam. So I teamed up with some people. We had 24 hours to make a game. And in that 24 hours, we were able to build a game. It was terrible. It was like you press a button for power and you throw a paper airplane. It sort of flies for a little bit. But that was the first game I ever made, and I was like, oh my god, this is amazing. And then over the years, I've formed a more consistent team. So myself and my two co-founders, Ryan and Josh, we've been making games since 2011. And in our final year at university, we were getting to the end, and we had seen the year before us and 2 years before us, a group of students had left and formed companies and remained in Hull and kept coming back to university and talking to us and doing those competitions and stuff. So we knew that it was possible for a group of students to graduate, form a games company of some shape or description, and be successful and do stuff.
Okay.
And as we were coming to the end of our year, we were basically presented with an opportunity to start a company, if we wanted to, at the university, with no rent. The rent was free for 6 months. So basically, it was just, if you can find the money to pay for yourself, that's it.
So,
and we were seriously considering it. And then the thing that we discussed was that we love making games. It was something that we want. Ultimately, we wanted to go and form our own company, in 5-10 years time. And it was that choice of, do we want to try and just make a game and make money that way, or do we want to do this and do it in a way that we can be sustainable? Because the three of us knew that making games is only profitable if the game sells well, and that obviously depends on you having built the game, made the game, sold the game, and it being successful. So straight off the bat, we were like, if we're going to make a company and make it work, we're going to have to do client work, contract work, and provide services to develop things outside of just games. And that's essentially where we started. We started by going, okay, well, we will make games, and the very first thing we did was make a game, because no one knew who we were and didn't want to give us any contract work. So we made a game made a game for Android, and that was the very first thing we released. And just as we were going to release that, and it was a very, when I say release, I mean we pressed the publish button and that was it. I think it may by now have had 500 plays or something like that. Like nothing to write home about. But just at the end of that, we got our first contract, and that first contract kept us going for the next 3-4 months. And in that 3-4 months, we got another contract and another and another, and it's rolled on from there to now where we are a relatively sustainable studio. I mean, we've been going for 5 years, so hopefully, I'd like to think we're sustainable. Tick that box. And still continue to make games on the side. So our primary focus is always to our clients, because if we let down a client or a contract, that is, that reflects really badly on us. It's not it wouldn't be the quality work we provide, anything like that. But we've never stopped making games, so we continue to work on games. So we were recently part of the Yuki Games Fund, working on Forgotten Sea, which is like a seafaring narrative-based game. And we're always working on something, because that's probably I'd call it our passion. But in reality, for us, we did not see financial security from just making games. So we chose to go down the services route as well.
That's really interesting. And so you've kind of answered my next question. But so now I'm going to have to think of something else to say. I want to touch on that, because I was going to ask, was it always the intention to do services as well as games? So you kind of answered that, but I kind of want to stick on that point because it's really important. I find, I'm making comics, we have a brand around that, and it's a similar thing. There's only so much you're going to make, only so much reach from the comic itself. It's kind of like, how can you then sort of repackage that or additional services? Unfortunately, I didn't think of it, ahead of time like you did, but eventually it kind of hit home. So I think that's an important point to touch on, that you can have that passion for something, but in terms of sustainability and making money, you have to think outside of it, and how are you going to sustain yourself to allow you to continue doing that, but also provide services to other people. So it's a good point. And then I guess in terms of the sort of client work versus making games, that you mentioned, so your priorities to your clients, but how do you go about balancing the work from your clients versus let's say the games that you want to make? Like how is that decision made? Are there certain types of clients or work that you take? Have you had to reject work for any reason? Like how is that maintained internally?
When literally just before we first started, so I think this was a day or two before we registered the company, we were at a games networking event at the University of Hull, and we were speaking to a seasoned game developer known as Fee Lemming, and she said to us, if you do service work and client work, you won't make games, and if you make games, you won't do service client work. And at the time, we were like, yeah, okay. And we were like, but we could do both. It's fine. We'll make it work. When actually, what we realize now, and this is what we tell students and things nowadays, is that what that means is that because you have to focus on one, whichever one you focus on, the other will be lost it can get lost in the wilderness. It will certainly always take a back step. So in terms of the balance between games and service work, games have always been, while they've always been our passion, we'll stay up for a weekend to make a game, and we'll do it in our spare time and all that kind of thing. They rarely are our focus at a given moment in time, because we have to sustain our client work. We've got to keep it coming in. We've got to get new work. We've got to do that kind of thing. And the game whatever game we're working on, will go from, in a good period, it might be 50-50. It might be 60-40 to the contract work. It might be 75-25. If we're at a period where it's 100% of the game, that means all of our client work has dried up, and that's a dangerous position, because obviously we are trying to sustain ourselves. We have an employee. We're trying to do all that kind of thing. So we will always, even if we've got a game to work on, we will always take the client work, because that's how we sustain ourselves. So we don't. It's not that we're always looking. It's not that we try and strike a balance between the two. We always look for how we can strike a balance. And the way that we do that is basically we buy ourselves out, or buy our time back, as it were. And that takes two different forms. Either we do enough contract work over an extended period of time that we have some kind of war chest or build up that allows us to take a foot off the gas a little bit, maybe say no to a couple of contracts that aren't worth our time, or not go and actively seek out contracts, that kind of thing.
Okay.
And in return, use that spare time to make games. Or we are always looking for funding to support us in making a game. So games that we've developed that are quite far down the line, we'll take the publishers, we'll ask, we'll pitch for funding and all that kind of thing. Also, brand new ideas. We go to funding pots all the time. So we've been funded by Creative England in the past. We've been funded by UK Games Fund. All these schemes are there to support. They're there to support people who are brand new into the industry, but also there for people who are trying to break out of that cycle of constant contract client work. More recently, we've changed it a little bit, and we do now do things because we are somewhat embedded in that contract side of things. We do things where we dedicate 2 hours every Friday. All four of us dedicate 2 hours basically to focus on internal work. So we would make tools and services and other bits and games and all that kind of stuff for ourselves, for BetaJesters and so on. Not exclusively games. They are the point of them is mostly to be commercial. So it's like, if it's not a game, it's likely to be something that we could sell on the asset store, for example.
Right.
Because we have lots of friends who do that kind of thing, and it's a good way to supplement your income without having to go all the way to releasing a game. But that's a relatively new endeavor that we've just taken on, and that was because we recognized that if you don't dedicate the time to it and say this window of time is purely for this, you can end up just not doing it ever. Which wasn't really what, and that's not, we would never wanted to be a company where we were never doing it. It's just that we always had to make sure that the balance was always going to be had to always be in favor of the contract work, because that's how we sustain ourselves.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. It's good that you've embedded that from the beginning. So, all right. So in terms of the games that you do make, or rather, what games do you make? Like, what type of games do you make? Because you typically find different studios make a certain type of game. So how would you describe the games that you make, and what are you currently working on game-wise?
It's an interesting one, because we come from, I mentioned before about the game jams. Coming from game jams, we are heavily into prototyping and just running with ideas. So just coming up with something and seeing how it works. So our games, they don't tend to any particular type. The only thing they probably tend to is a less intense art style, so low poly, faceted, or voxel, that kind of thing. Because we don't have a dedicated artist on the team, we have art capabilities, but we don't have a dedicated 3D modeler or anything like that. We founded as a team of 3 programmers, and that has guided a lot of what we do. So the games that we have worked on, we've worked on a top-down it's like a Pong style game, but you're sort of throwing a disc and that kind of thing. We've done a VR escape the room experience. We've done an open world pirate sailing game with an inventory and quests RPG kind of thing with boss monsters and all that kind of stuff. We've done an open world sailing game that's more of a narrative focus. We've done a top down robot sumo fighting game. We float between many genres and game types, because they normally come from game jams and normally come from what would be cool to make. And we're always interested in the things that we've not tried before. So Global Game Jam last year, 2019, was when we went into it going, we want to make a game. What do we want to make? And at the time, none of us had really worked on a narrative game. So we're like, let's make a narrative game. And that's how we made Forgotten Sea in 48 hours, which was the basis of the game that we took to UK Games Fund, that we got the funding for and have now developed into a full demo. Because it was just something we'd not worked on before. And there's more value in trying stuff out that you've not tried than redoing the things that you always do. Not to say that having a style or a way of doing things isn't powerful. So, like a really good example of that, and I've forgotten the name of it, the arcane time loop game that was in the PS5 launch trailer, which I've now forgotten the name of off the top of my head. I'm going to remember it in a minute. Or I might subtly Google it in the background. But Deathloop, there we go. Deathloop. You can see when the game's showing, you can see Dishonored calling through. You can see that this is the. If you had to ask, okay, if someone showed you that trailer and said what game this company made before, it would probably have been Dishonored, which is great because it's so known. It's like a thumbprint, right? They know what that is. But the balance of that is that this is a brand new style. The music, the way it plays off each other, the two-player aspect, they brought in all these things that they hadn't done before, and that could easily have come from, a game jam or something with a Dishonored engine. They went, right, what have we not done before? Oh, can we do it multiplayer? Can we do it with two people? Can we do it with a noir setting? Is there a way to inject a bit of, make it more fluid, or whatever it may have been? And then that's the variation spin.
Gives
like
you
I said, we'd made an open world sailing game before, 3 years before, but we had made one, and then we ended up, to be fair, we didn't realize at the time, but we ended up making a spin on that. We've had an open world sailing game, and now we've got an open world sailing game, but narrative focused instead of RPG focused.
Right.
And it's a way of finding out the things that you want to make. And at the end of the day, you want to make the style that you want is the style that you're interested in. You want to make games that you love, and then you'll pour your passion into it.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I guess, it's the working from a basis and building from that, or like you say, kind of you learn something new when you go in new directions each time. So it kind of depends on what you as a studio, you as creators kind of value. So makes sense. And, we talked about you starting this company out of university, and I just wanted to sort of find out what role education had on your development, specific to games, but also in the context of where we are now, where for a lot of young people, sort of education has just been disrupted, and a lot of people are kind of, I guess, concerned about the future. So, did what you did in university as a program? I guess that would have directly helped you. But did you learn outside of that also? What would you say to people kind of looking towards their futures and wanting to get into games?
So I went to university not knowing how to program at all. The only programming I'd done was a couple of open days, just sort of very basic things, just introductions to the idea. And so university is what taught me how to program. It taught me the underlying concepts. It taught me how to think like a programmer, how to view problems and solve them using coding. Which is if you want to be a programmer and you want to be a good programmer, it's absolutely vital. That understanding the underpinning concepts is how you sort of develop over time. But once you have those aspects and you've learned the basics, everything else comes from experience, and further education. And your course and my course was fantastic, and I learned a lot from it. But for example, in terms of games, all of my gaming knowledge has come from games development knowledge, apart from a few bits and pieces here and there, have come from doing game jams. As a student, doing game jams, making my own games in my spare time, trying to teach myself things because I thought that it was worth learning. So, for example, I've now been a Unity developer for 5.5 years. Unity was not taught at my university. Towards the end of my final year, I was going, I now need to understand. When I leave university, I'm either probably going to need some knowledge of Unreal and or Unity, because all the jobs out there. This is before BetaJester was even a thing. I need some knowledge of these engines, because if I don't, I'm going to go out there with skills in what was at the time XNA, which is a great language to learn for making games, not useful for going into a games company, because there are some XNA games, but very few.
I can imagine.
Celeste is the biggest one in the last few years, and that's really about it. And so I was like, okay, well, I'll do it myself. So all of my Unity knowledge came from me, like, Googling teach me Unity and doing tutorials and doing all that kind of stuff. And all of my ability to make games has come from doing game jams and watching videos on YouTube and all this kind of thing and just trying to make games. So your university course will get you to a good standard, and the best courses will force you into these experiences. So, for example, I know I've worked with educators in the past who've tweaked their university courses to be more team-based, to focus on projects, to focus on building games, because that is what the real world is. Yeah. That's what you're going to do, and B, that experience is a safer space to try things out and a fantastic space to learn. I don't think for a second I'd be anywhere near the game developer that I was or am if I hadn't done game jams. And that's not even to say that I'm a particularly good or successful game developer. I just know that if I hadn't done game jams, I would be years behind where I was, because I just wouldn't understand. There's just stuff you learn, like if you're shooting a gun, when does it feel good? What is the right depth? If you're using a controller, a classic example, if you are moving a top-down character, if you say up, they move +1, and right, they move +1. If the person points up and right, they move 2. So they move faster if they're going diagonally. And you learn from having done it in a game jam that you have to use you have to normalize the vector to make it equal to 1. Because if you don't do that, then they'll move twice the speed. And that's just something, like, you may get taught that if you do something specifically in that area, but you may get taught the basics and never learn it. And now you know it in your head. So when next time you build that game, you already go, oh yeah, I just need to normalize the vector. Yeah. And those little additional, like, bits that you just pick up over time, I guess they're, in some sense, they're polish, essentially. You only learn from experiencing what it is to make a game and all the things that come up in that. And when you start, there will be, basic level things that you don't know. And then years and years later, you still won't know barely anything, but you'll know all the stuff that you've done from having done them before.
Previously, yeah. No, that makes sense, yeah. So I think, to just like kind of learn by doing, and it's the most valuable experience, like trying, failing, learning, trying again. So cool. All right. So as we've been talking, I kind of picked up on a few kind of terms that you've used, and it's just occurred to me that everyone watching might not know every single term. So I just want to throw a quick, just do a quick fire. I'm going to throw a term at you. If you just want to give me a brief explanation of it and why it's important for sort of young people to know. So let's start with game jam. So what is a game jam?
Jam is a concentrated period of time within which you have to make a game, normally based on a theme. The period of time could be 24 hours, 48, 72, a week, a month. The idea being that at the start, everybody comes in cold with no or very little outside resources. Sometimes people bring code they've written before, that kind of thing, but you certainly haven't started working on the game that you're going to make. You're given a theme, which in the past has been things like a heartbeat sound, or it could be space, or it could be dreaming of sheep, something like that. And then you start by thinking of how do I want to interpret that? What kind of game do I want to make? And then you have to make that game within the period of time. The goal being making something that you can then demonstrate at the end. Sometimes game jams are judged. Sometimes they have prizes. Sometimes they're online. Sometimes they take place in locations or universities, that kind of thing. Great example of this would be the Global Game Jam, which is a game jam that takes place at set locations, but all over the world. So thousands of people come together all at the same time for 48 hours and make a game. And then there are whole communities around it and people talking about it and that kind of thing. And it's important because when you dedicate that shorter period of time to something, and by dedicate I mean as much as possible you let go of other responsibilities, so you're not focusing on, how do I release this game, or is it going to make me money, or other work that you have to do. You're dedicating yourself to the idea of this game within a short period of time. You will be shocked at the amount which you can create. So firstly, it reinvigorates you creatively because you're like building something brand new. You'll have something that you can demonstrate, put on your portfolio, on your website, whatever it may be. And finally, it's something that you can take forward. You know, most of our games have come from game jams. All the games that we've either gone to publishers with or got funding for have come from game jams. And I am an absolutely massive proponent of them. So I've taken part in over 20, which ranges from competing, judging, mentoring, running, all this kind of thing. And there are whole game studios that believe game jams are one of the best things you can do. So Unity have internal game jams. Bossa Studios have internal game jams. I think Sumo Digital as well. Because if you want to see a bunch of creative people come up with just more fantastic ideas than you can possibly imagine in a short space of time, game jams are the best way to do it.
Cool. All right. Another term I'm going to throw at you is because you're involved in Yuki. So
yes.
What is Yuki?
So Yuki is sort of the government body for the games industry. So they basically represent us at a political-ish level in terms of representing the views of the games industry, what we stand for, what we mean, etc. Yuki stands for Yuki. I have to look this up because I can't remember now.
Yeah, so UK. What?
Interactive Entertainment. Yeah, I had double check that one. But the idea being that if you want to know things about games at sort of at the highest level in terms of what does the EU think about us, what does the government think about us, can find out more about resources or support or other companies, that kind of thing. Yuki is the body with which you can go to and speak about it. And if you're in the position, you can also join them, as BetaJester has, for example. They also give a lot back. So they go on tours around the country talking about the games industry, being involved in it. They run a game jam as well for students. They do a whole host of things for indies and that kind of stuff. So they're a collective body for the good of the games industry in the UK.
Okay. I'm going to throw one more at you. And this is one, admittedly, I didn't even know was a thing until 6 months ago, maybe. The BAFTA Games Crew.
So BAFTA Games Crew is BAFTA as an organisation, as you have hopefully seen, the TV and Game Awards, that kind of thing. They also try and support up and coming talent in the games industry and other industries as well, to be fair. But specifically, the BAFTA Games Crew is for people in the games industry who have between 2 and 5 years of experience and want to join basically a group of like-minded individuals who are trying to network and meet people within the games industry. So you can apply online at the minute. Applications have not opened yet for this year because of the unfortunate things going on has delayed that. Your world is on pause for the time being. But when it opens up, you submit information about yourself, what you've done in your 2 years of experience. There's a nominal fee which you pay if you're accepted. There's a nominal fee you pay to join, which I think is last time was £25. It may go up. And then you basically join a group of, I think it's at least 200, possibly more, 200 people from all over the UK, all different disciplines in the games industry, and then are given the opportunity to attend events, ranging from masterclasses with experts to roundtables to networking events, but also a group of people that you get to meet at different games industry events, and just network with and chat to and have this common ground where you end up building a group. So I've been part of the BAFTA crew now for, I think this is my 3rd year that I'm currently in, and I've gained lifelong friends from it. I have met so many people. I have a much greater understanding of the games industry because of all that. I've learned a lot from the different masterclasses and talks and that kind of thing. And it's something that I recommend looking into, and it's something that I recommend applying for when it comes up at some point this year.
Cool. And depending on how good my editing skills are, those links might flash up, but they may not if I'm just like a terrible editor. But somehow we'll get those links out to people.
They'll be somewhere.
Yeah, they'll be somewhere. So I kind of wanted to ask about, I guess as big as it sounds, the future of gaming. Just because we're in this weird space, and you're someone that does interact with a lot of young people, because you go sort of up and down the country, sort of speaking to young people who want to get into the gaming industry, and you yourself are an e-mentor. So as someone who interacts with essentially the future of gaming, what do you think young people should be focusing on? So is there like a particular technology, like I know VR is coming up? Is there particular game experiences that you see as being ones to focus on and maybe ones to avoid? Like, what do you think people should be aware of?
The two key things are start early, as early as you can. The sooner you start looking into making games, and it doesn't really matter what they are, because I mean, I saw announced yesterday, I think it was, a brand new handheld console which has all of the old games, that, like Game Boy cartridges and all that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So games never die; they're always around. And the sooner you start, and the sooner you start exploring, how do you make a game? What kind of games that you can make interest you, the skills and all that kind of thing. The sooner you'll get to a place where you can build the game that you want to make. Because that's the end of it, is that if you have a vision of a game that you think people would enjoy, or that you would enjoy playing end of the day, when you have the skills to make that, you become so motivated to build that game, to then show people and encourage it. And that's where all the great games come from, right? If you look at everything from the humongous, titans, you look at GTA 5, you take that back to GTA 1. GTA 1 is a game that now, in theory, I could make a GTA 1. I have the skills to make a GTA 1.
Let me just stop you there, because I feel some people sort of watching this will not realize like the first GTA was 2D top down. Like you're talking about
how can you say people won't know what that is? No.
You know what? You'd be
You're
surprised.
Right. But that's it. People, you're right. People,
for a lot of people, GTA is 3D, and it's always been 3D. So I just want to let people know.
Whereas I have a very distinct memory of GTA 3 coming out, and the shock at this being this 3D game with a world you could explore and drive around in and go wherever you wanted, and being like, something? Wow. Go on.
So the worst prediction I've probably ever made, certainly to games, maybe ever, and I remember when I was a kid and hearing about GTA going 3D, and I remember saying that would never work. Why are they doing that? I was just adamant. That's like, why would you make it 3D? How are you going to do that? I don't even think I should admit that on a recorded camera, but it's out there now. So.
But that's it, and that's the other thing, is that all these games that we love nowadays came from places where they didn't exist. End of the day, like you think, Halo is an original Xbox game where it started, which is madness when you think about it. Like, it's not even PS2 era; it was before that. We've just seen announced Destruction All Stars, which comes from a game called Destruction Derby, which is a PS1 game. Like these, and you can go back further. There are games that get released now that were Commodore games, Spectrum games, and all this kind of stuff. Like, they all started somewhere, and many of them is just people working in their basement. And like it's that we're in this weird space where it's then if you just made a game, you were in a good position. And now obviously the competition is high. It's much easier for everyone to make games. But it's also easier for everyone to make games. So if you want to get involved and try and building something, Unity and Unreal, which are both AAA engines, Sea of Thieves, an unbelievably technically impressive game. It's made in Unreal, right? And you at home can go and download that and start making a game. I'm not saying you're going to make Sea of Thieves, but you might make, Sky of Birds. I don't know, but it might be something. It might, but you got to start somewhere, and you can build something that if you enjoy it and other people enjoy it, then that's the secret to making games, right? And that means by the time you get to, whatever age it might be, or when you start a company, or when you join a company, you'll be so much further ahead than you would have been had you not started when you started, right? Yeah. That's side one. Point two is go and do as many other things that aren't games as well. Nintendo, obviously one of the biggest games companies, in the world, known for their novelty, their intrigue, their interesting ideas, have a policy of hiring people who are not from the games industry. Not exclusively, they do hire games industry, of course, but they make it a point to hire people who have interests outside of games. Because if you just hire people if the only thing you like is games, and all of your experience is games, you will make the games that have already been made.
Yeah,
because you don't know anything else.
Yeah.
And, things like, so for a big one, for example, is something like color theory, right? That's why, you get people come to games art from other places, from classical art or from whatever it may be, pointillism and that kind of thing. And those games, when they get made, are stunning because people go, oh, wow, that's amazing. I haven't seen that before.
Exactly.
And that's the key thing. Novelty is just unbelievably huge in the games industry, right? One of the most successful games, well, I think one of the most, a massively successful game, Super Hot, right? Mechanically, visually and mechanically, it's not like hugely deep, right? You can understand it quite simply. There are 3 colors. White is background, black is interactable, red shoot and kill, right? That's the rules, right? And the game mechanic is shooting, which we all know, and time stops. The time moves when you move, right? If you as a player move, then time will move, and if you stand perfectly still, everything stands perfectly still. Very simple idea. Hadn't been done properly before. I don't think it hadn't been done before at all. And I think if there had been implementations, they were minor, or like parts of games. They dedicated themselves to this one idea, executed it unbelievably well, and have now made millions from this one game. Because novelty will win out. Novelty and execution win out over everything else. You have to produce something that is of a very plays well and feels good and all that kind of thing as well. And that's where the experience side comes in as well. That's why you have to. The sooner you start making games, the better you are at making a good game. But having interest outside is a thing that gives you the creative ideas that will separate you from people who have only played games before. And this could be anything. Watch films, listen to music, read books, explore art, do just loads of stuff, because the wider your palette is to draw from your ideas, the more interesting ideas you will come up with.
Yeah, no, I agree with that 100%. I mean, even as I'm making comics and manga, like, I've spoke at events or wherever it might be, to people who kind of assume I'm like a super knowledgeable about manga and all forms of anime, and I'm really not. Like, my inspiration comes from different places, just like novels, like cartoons, video game stories, all that. But what it allows you to do is, like you say, bring in other ideas rather than just regurgitating what you've seen from your favorite manga, because that's just going to get old really quickly. So that's a really good point, and I think one people should just absolutely consider and just expand your horizons as much as you can. All right, so I'm going to ask you one last question, and this is perhaps the most important question, and it is PlayStation or Xbox for next generation. Keep in mind that depending on your answer, half the people watching might disregard this entire interview and everything you said. So,
everything before, just that whole generation of gamers just gone.
It's done.
So we're in a difficult place because we've seen. I got to think how to word it. We're in a difficult place because we haven't seen everything that the next consoles have to bring. So I have owned a lot of PlayStation consoles over the years. So I never had, for example, an Xbox 360, and I never had an original Xbox. And so I've always got a soft feeling for Sony, but obviously I have a Windows PC, so I have Microsoft as well. What we are seeing in terms of you saw it in some of the game demos shown yesterday in the sort of announcement trailer. But particularly there is an Unreal Engine 5 tech demo showing what the PlayStation 5 is capable of.
Yeah.
Technically, it is a very impressive machine. It has the ability, because they are focusing on that kind of stuff, it has the ability to make games look really, really good. And technology has come a long way since the PlayStation 4 was launched 6 years ago. Like, we've seen all the ray tracing demos, and we've all seen the photo scanned objects where we take real world objects and copy them basically using photos and put those in the game instead of trying to make new ones. We're now at a point where games can look crystal clear and basically real. And the PlayStation does a lot to do that. That being said, we don't know what the Xbox is going to be. The Xbox Series X. Yeah, I had to remember. It's going to be capable of in terms of visual quality. We're not 100% sure yet. What we do know is that Xbox Game Pass is incredibly good for getting you from zero to games without having to think about it too much.
Yeah.
If when that comes out, all the Microsoft Studio games will be on there, all that kind of thing. So if you want to play Halo Infinite and the next Gears of War and the next Sea of Thieves or whatever it may be, you don't have to spend 180 quid buying 3 titles. You can spend whatever it is, £8 a month, and have them all available to you. And PlayStation has PlayStation Now, but it's not taken off in the same way. I don't really know why. I don't know what it is, but I know that the Xbox Game Pass it has that and will continue to have that. So right now we're in this weird battle between. Right now, this may change in a couple of months' time. Right now, the battle is between unbelievably impressive games versus a lot of very good games.
Yeah, and a service.
That may all change. And what?
Very much
other stuff, yeah.
Yes,
yeah. It's going to change in 2 months' time. I can wholeheartedly imagine PlayStation is going to announce a new service with all their games on it, and Microsoft are going to announce that their console can make games look, it turns out you walk into the Xbox and you're in the game. There you go. Have fun. Yeah. And that's also interesting, is that we are, in theory, 5 months out from these consoles releasing, if they're going to release for holiday 2020. And we still don't know all the details yet. We're being drip-fed information. And it's going to be weird. So I will what I will do is I will buy whichever console all my friends buy, which is the classic, unfortunately. Okay. I'm not swayed yet. Nothing has come out that makes me go, there's no killer game. There's nothing that says to me, I must own X.
Yeah.
Most of the games I play nowadays are all cross-platform anyway. But I will buy the console that my friends buy, because the thing I care most about is playing games with my friends. That's what I do. I play FIFA with people. I play Rocket League or Call of Duty or that kind of thing. Yeah. I will play them with my friends. And so I will get whatever everybody else gets, which is a terrible answer.
So I'm going to let it go because we're all for social gaming experiences. So
exactly.
Allow that.
But I would say watch this space is what I would say in terms of these consoles.
Yeah, I think personally I would like both.
I'm the dream.
Yeah, I know. Dream. I don't think that's going to happen. That's a difficult conversation with my bank account. But so for me, I'm big on sort of gaming narratives and focusing on one particular big game and getting lost in the story. So that's why I've kind of leaned towards PlayStation. We'll see. I also would have accepted the answer Nintendo Switch. I would have accepted that as well. But I like the way...
I've already got a Switch.
Yeah,
so
everyone has. I think the Nintendo are the real winner because they're everyone's second console, which really
exactly they snuck underneath and played everybody off against each other. Yeah, it was a fantastic move. And that's the thing. I've got so many games. I've got so many games in this generation left to play. I've got games that from past Christmases that I've not started on yet. I'm halfway through Horizon Zero Dawn, and now obviously two has been announced. So I don't even own Breath of the Wild yet, which is one of my things. I'm like, I need to just buy it and play it, because I know the moment I start, that'll be my thing.
That's it.
And that's all stuff I've still got left to do this generation. So I'm not sprinting into next generation. I mean, company aside, whether we want to develop games for it and that kind of thing is a different question. But personally, I will take everything at a canter until I know, there's something that makes me go, now is the time to invest.
Okay. I like that outlook, very measured, sensible,
Yeah.
all very, very good. Yeah, and I think if there's one thing we can take from this entire discussion is that there are too many games.
Yeah.
So no, thank you so much for joining me and just letting us know more about the way you work, about which console to get in the next generation. Yeah, it's been good having you.
Thanks for having me.
Cool. And just to let people know again that you can sort of take on this discussion in our Discord community. We'll post a link to the extended video at some point in the future after the GamePad Online event. If you also are a fan of hearing my voice, I just want to let you know that we also have a podcast, Story X Story, where we talk about stories across pop culture and just like do deep dives into them, interviews like the one we're doing today with people from the games industry, but also manga, comic creators, cosplayers also. So you can check that out online. Again, our email address is gamepad@mayamada.com. You can send us your feedback and also check out gamepad.events for more information on future gaming events and community news. So until then, take care and we'll see you all later.